Have you ever sat in silence and wondered why, despite all your achievements, your heart still aches with a sense of not being enough? Have you looked around your home, your bank account, your possessions, and still felt a subtle void lingering inside, whispering doubts into the quiet spaces of your mind? There is a question we rarely ask ourselves, and yet it may be the most important one of all. Have you confused your net worth with your self-worth? It's an easy mistake to make in a world that constantly measures value in numbers. Numbers in bank accounts, credit scores, social media followers, steps on a career ladder, and check marks on a to-do list. We live in a culture that rewards productivity, accumulation, and outward success. And somewhere along the way, we begin to believe that these metrics reflect our intrinsic value. But there is a quiet truth underneath all the noise. Your worth as a human being cannot be measured, bought, or compared. It simply is. And when you forget that, life becomes an endless pursuit of something you already possess. Consider the times you've introduced yourself not by who you are, but by what you do. I'm a lawyer. I'm a business owner. I work in finance. We use our job titles as identity markers, assuming they speak for the entirety of our being. And when those roles are threatened, or if they change or disappear, we feel lost. This is the danger of attaching your self-worth to your net worth. When the numbers fluctuate us, as they always do, so does your sense of self. True self-worth, by contrast, is steady, silent, and rooted in being, not doing. It is the quiet confidence of knowing that you are enough, not because of what you have, but because of who you are. But how do we return to this truth, especially when we've lived so long in the other direction? It begins with awareness, watching the mind as it compares, judges, and assigns value. It means noticing the subtle discomfort you feel when someone more successful walks into the room, or the slight relief when someone less accomplished does. That flicker of reaction is not who you are. It is the conditioned ego reacting to its own fragile self-image. The ego thrives on comparison, and it feeds on the illusion that we are separate, better than, or worse than others. But the deeper self, the true self, knows no such division. It sees beyond roles and titles and recognizes the shared essence in all beings. When you sit in silence, free from labels and distractions, what remains? Not your resume, not your savings account, not your LinkedIn profile. Just breathe, just awareness, just being. In that stillness, you are not a success or a failure. You are not rich or poor. You are simply alive, awake, present. And that is more than enough. Think of a newborn baby. It has no wealth, no achievements, no plans or goals. And yet, we see its value as infinite. Why then, as adults, do we forget that we too possess that same intrinsic worth? Why do we let society convince us otherwise? Somewhere along the path of growing up, we internalized the idea that our value had to be earned, that love, respect, and belonging were conditional. But that is not truth, that is training. And like all conditioning, it can be undone through conscious reflection and inner work. Begin by asking yourself gently, who am I without my job? Who am I without my income, my house, my image? These questions may stir fear at first, because the ego feels threatened when its identity is questioned. But beyond that fear lies freedom. The freedom to live not as a brand, but as a being. To measure your life not in dollars, but in moments of presence, acts of kindness, depth of connection. When you begin to disentangle your identity from your net worth, a profound shift occurs. You stop striving for approval and begin acting from authenticity. You stop accumulating out of fear and begin creating from love. your life becomes less about proving something and more about expressing something, your truth, your soul, your essence. And ironically, it is often in that state of alignment that material abundance flows more freely. Why? Because people are drawn to authenticity, to presence, to genuine passion. But by then, the wealth is no longer the goal. It is a byproduct of a life well lived. This does not mean you abandon ambition or reject money. Money is a neutral tool, neither good nor bad. It is the attachment to it, the belief that it defines you, that causes suffering. When you relate to money with mindfulness, you can use it wisely, generously, and with intention. But it is no longer your mirror. Your reflection lives within, not in your portfolio. Take a moment today to reflect on where you derive your sense of worth. Is it from your productivity, your possessions, your performance? And if so, can you gently invite yourself to remember a deeper truth, that your worth is not earned, but inherent? When you wake up tomorrow, before reaching for your phone or your to-do list, pause. Place your hand on your heart. Feel the life within you. That life does not need a promotion to be valid. It does not need applause to be meaningful. It simply is, and so are you. In your quiet moments, return to that feeling. Let it anchor you. Let it guide your choices. Let it remind you that while the world may judge by appearance, your soul knows your essence. And that is where true peace lives, not in success, but in sincerity. Not in status, but in stillness. Not in accumulation, but in awareness. Imagine a world where we taught children their worth cannot be increased or decreased by numbers, where we praised effort over outcome, presence over performance. What kind of adults would they grow into? What kind of world would we create? The shift begins with you. Each time you resist the urge to compare, each time you choose presence over perfection, you are rewiring the culture. You are planting seeds of a new paradigm, one where human value is not a transaction, but a truth. This journey back to yourself is not always easy. The noise of the world is loud, and the habits of the mind are persistent. But every moment offers a choice. Will you believe the lie of lack? Or will you rest in the truth of your wholeness? Even now, as you listen, something within you remembers. Something deeper than thought, older than identity. That something is your true self. It is spacious, loving, and free. And it is not for sale. Walk gently with this knowing. Speak to yourself with the tenderness you would offer a beloved friend. Let your inner dialogue shift from criticism to compassion. Your worth does not hinge on your productivity, your looks, your income, or your past. You are worthy because you exist. Period. Everything else is just a tale. In the Zen tradition, we often return to the beginner's mind, a mind free from assumptions and open to wonder. What if you approached your own life this way, free from the stories you've been told or have told yourself? Who would you be if you let go of the need to prove? There is no final answer, and that's the beauty of it. Life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. And your value is not a problem either. It does not require fixing or improving. It only asks to be seen, accepted, and honored. As you continue on your path, let this awareness light your way. Let it shape your relationships, soften your goals, and bring peace to your mind. Let it remind you that while net worth can fluctuate, self-worth is constant. It is the quiet light that never goes out, no matter the weather of your life. And the more you trust in it, the brighter it shines, not just for you, but for everyone you meet. In this light, you are enough. You always have been. You always will be. So now that you've remembered this truth, that your self-worth is not contingent on your net worth. What happens next? The path forward is not about renouncing the material world or denying your ambitions, but rather about walking through life with a clearer understanding of who you are beneath all that you've been taught to chase. When you no longer see money as a mirror for your identity, you become free to engage with it from a place of clarity instead of craving. You can build wealth with intention, not to prove your value, but to support your values. You can pursue success, not to feel like someone, but to fully express the someone you already are. This shift, though subtle, changes everything. It transforms how you show up in relationships, less needy, more open. It changes how you handle setbacks, not as personal failures, but as passing seasons. You begin to measure your life, not by accumulation, but by alignment. Not by how much you have, but by how deeply you live. This isn't a one-time realization. It's a practice, a remembering, a coming home, again and again. Each time the world tries to pull you away from yourself, and each time you return, the silence feels more familiar, the peace more natural, because it is. It's who you've been all along. And so, as you return again and again to this inner knowing, something begins to shift, not only within you, but in how you engage with the world around you. You begin to notice how many of the systems and messages you once accepted without question are built upon the illusion that you must earn your worth. Advertisements promise that happiness lies just one purchase away. Career ladders suggest that value increases with every step climbed. Even conversations with friends can subtly echo this belief, as success stories are celebrated and struggles quietly avoided. But when you pause long enough to really see it all, it becomes clear how pervasive and heavy this conditioning is, and how liberating it is to let it go. You realize that you can appreciate success without attaching your identity to it. You can experience failure without letting it define you. You can hold money in your hands without letting it hold your heart. There is such quiet power in that. And with that power comes a responsibility, not to prove yourself, but to honor yourself, to live truthfully, to embody the peace that comes from within, rather than trying to extract it from the world outside. When you no longer confuse net worth with self-worth, life becomes less about striving and more about flowing. Less about status, more about sincerity. You start to see others differently too, not as competitors in some invisible race, but as fellow travelers, each with their own silent battles, each worthy of love and respect, no matter their circumstances. Compassion replaces judgment. Gratitude replaces greed. Presence replaces pressure. And slowly the way you move through life becomes a reflection of this deeper truth. Not flashy, not loud, just steady, clear, grounded. Like a mountain unmoved by the winds of opinion, or a tree rooted deeply in the soil of its own being. And as you continue to live from this place of inner grounding, the world begins to meet you differently, not because it has changed, but because your perception has. You no longer walk into a room wondering how you measure up, but instead, you enter as yourself, whole, enough, unshaken. You no longer feel the compulsion to explain your choices, to defend your path, or to dress your life in layers of justification. You are simply present, and that presence speaks louder than words ever could. There's a calmness to you now, not born from apathy, but from alignment. You're no longer chasing value, because you're living it. Every breath you take is a declaration of worth, and every conscious choice you make honors that worth. Whether you are earning or resting, building or reflecting, you carry yourself with the quiet dignity of someone who remembers that their value is not on the line. You are not better when you're busy, and not less when you're still. You are not elevated by praise, and not diminished by failure. You are simply here, as you are, and that is everything. This internal freedom opens doors that striving never could. It creates space for joy that doesn't need justification. It allows you to pursue dreams, not as a way to escape your present, but as a way to express it more fully. You begin to create not out of scarcity, but out of overflow. You begin to give, not to be seen as generous, but because generosity is simply what flows from a full heart. And slowly, subtly, your life becomes a kind of offering, not flashy, not performative, but honest, authentic, a soft rebellion against a culture of comparison, a gentle reminder to everyone you meet that there is another way to be, a way that begins not with accumulation, but with presence, not with achievement, but with awareness, and not with proving, but with simply being. And so, as this deeper awareness takes root within you, it begins to ripple into all areas of your life, quietly but profoundly. In your relationships, you no longer seek validation as a means of proving you are lovable. You are no longer performing for approval or shrinking for acceptance. Instead, you meet others as you truly are, and in doing so, you grant them permission to do the same. Conversations become less about impressing and more about connecting. Differences no longer feel threatening. You see past titles, appearances, and even opinions into the soft, vulnerable center that lives in every human being. And from this place, love becomes less a transaction and more a state of being. You are no longer asking, "Do they see my worth?" but rather, "Can I offer my presence fully, with nothing to defend or prove?" And as your relationships deepen in honesty and spaciousness, something beautiful unfolds. The connections you attract are no longer built on performance, status, or convenience, but on mutual recognition of shared humanity. They become sacred, not in formality, but in depth, not perfect, but real. In your work, too, the shift is unmistakable. No longer driven by the fear of not being enough, you begin to approach your tasks with more clarity, more care, and, ironically, more power. Your creativity is no longer filtered through the lens of needing to impress. It flows more freely, unburdened by ego, unchained from comparison. You begin to seek meaning over metrics, alignment over applause. And because you are no longer gripping tightly to outcomes to define your worth, your work becomes more sustainable, more genuine, and more joyful. Whether your career thrives or stumbles, you remain steady, because you have not invested your identity in the result. This doesn't make you less committed. In fact, it makes you more courageous. You can take risks without fear of losing yourself. You can fail without collapsing into shame. And you can succeed without becoming addicted to external approval. Every challenge becomes an opportunity not to prove yourself, but to meet yourself more deeply. You begin to see your career as an extension of your values, not your value itself. And in your everyday moments, those ordinary spaces between what the world deems important, you begin to feel the richness that was always there but often overlooked. Washing the dishes becomes an act of care, not a chore to finish quickly. Walking becomes meditation. Eating becomes gratitude. Silence becomes a teacher, not an absence to be filled. You find joy in simplicity, and that joy feels more lasting, more rooted. Not because life has become perfect, but because you are no longer reaching outward to complete yourself. You have returned home, again and again, to the deep well of worth within you. And it is from this home that you live, breathe, love, and create. And yes, even in times of financial hardship or instability. This inner foundation becomes not only relevant, but essential. Because while the world around you may shift, jobs lost, markets downturn, savings dwindle, your core remains untouched. It's in these very moments, when external security feels most uncertain, that the illusion of net worth as self-worth begins to fall apart. And though that unraveling may bring discomfort, it also carries the invitation to rediscover what can never be taken from you. You may not control your bank account, but you still control your breath. You still choose how to speak to yourself in the silence of your uncertainty. You still decide whether to spiral into fear or soften into presence. And this softening isn't passivity, it's power. It is the strength to face reality without letting it define you. It is the wisdom to respond rather than react. It is the deep, abiding trust that no amount of scarcity in the outer world can erase the abundance that lives in your inner world. This is not to romanticize hardship, nor to deny the very real pain and difficulty that financial struggle brings. It is hard. It can be frightening. It tests your resilience and patience. But even in that testing, there is an opportunity to no longer define yourself by your circumstances and to see that your true wealth lies not in numbers, but in your ability to stay present, compassionate, and kind, especially to yourself. You can lose everything to you and still remain intact, still remain you. And strangely, it is often through loss that we find our unshakable center. When what we thought sustained us falls away, we finally meet what truly does. That meeting may be quiet. It may come in a single breath, a single tear, a moment of surrender when you stop grasping for control and simply sit in the truth of now. In that space, you may feel something deeper holding you, something that doesn't speak in words, but in calm, something that doesn't answer your mind's questions, but eases your heart's burdens. That something is the self untouched by fortune or failure, the self that existed before the first dollar was ever earned and will remain long after the last one is spent. And as you walk through uncertain times with this awareness, you become a living example of resilience rooted in truth. You show others, without even trying, that peace is not the product of financial stability, but the source of it. That clarity and groundedness can lead to wise decisions, creative solutions, and meaningful action far more effectively than panic or self-doubt. You may begin to see money less as a measure of success and more as a resource to be stewarded mindfully, without fear, without obsession. Whether it flows in or flows out, your relationship with it becomes healthier, freer. Because now you know, money is a tool. It can support your values, amplify your expression, and bring ease to your life. But it is not the container of your worth. You're not less when you have less. You're not more when you have more. You are always whole. If this message brought you calm, this space is always here for you. Subscribe, return, and walk this quiet path with us, one breath at a time. Until next time, remember, the greatest wealth is contentment.